Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. I thank everybody that's involved with this process because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.
How in the world do you follow something like Letty now?
Here, you're on.
Yeah, I can see that. Welcome. This is a 2-week series presented by Reader's Magnet, and we're just right now starting day 1 of the 2nd week. For those of you who have been following my ramblings on, thank you. And for those who have not, I hope you will join. I want to start off. Oh, incidentally, yes, I am Carl Johnoff. The book is Badge 411. And down the bottom, it says Kurt Niemann. Well, Kurt Niemann is my pen name. I've talked about this several times. When you're writing the kind of book where the names need to be changed to protect the innocent, and you, the author, are the innocent, it really helps to have a pen name, a nom de plume for those who are intellectually adjusted here. This is my wife, Shirley. She has so far spent 28 and a half or close to 29 years of her life supporting me and tolerating me and joining me in my various projects. And I am happy to say she's a wonderful partner. And I wrote this whole book by hand on a yellow pad. Well, on a yellow pad. I mean, it's that thick anymore. And she typed it all. And boy, for that, I'm eternally grateful too. I want to start off with just a little footnote. I saw a cartoon this morning that reminded me of real life. The cartoon was a bunch of Cossacks who were preparing to invade a castle or a town or whatever. And the leader there is saying to all the troops, okay, now we're going to go out there and we're going to burn and pillage, and we're just going to really make a fortune from this. But I want to remind you all, do not walk into Mrs. McGillicuddy's garden, okay? And why is that funny? Because in real life, that can actually happen. One of my chapters early on in Badge 411 deals with the subjects around projects and barrios in the inner cities. And
good day to both of you. We're thrilled to be here today as well. Thank
hey,
you, Cassandra.
Thank you. And one of the subjects in that chapter is called Bat Lady. Well, on the night that I and some of my partners were standing on a corner waiting things to happen because there were two opposing gangs standing across the street from each other, getting ready to, well, they were shouting names and slogans and threats and whatnot, and doing everything but actually going to war. But they sounded awfully terrible. And the lady that lives on one of the corners was a little old lady who actually had a big flower garden on her front yard.
This is Maya. Says it's my first time joining. Excited to hear what you have to say about your topic. Thank you for joining.
And boy, I have some notes to make. Anyway, when the two opposing gangsters or sides of gangsters decided they really are going to jump on each other, the one group attacked the other, and they're into that little old lady's garden, and she came screaming out of their house with a bat in her hand, and she's swinging that bat, and the gangsters broke it up entirely, and everybody just ran away.
So that cartoon was appropriate this morning.
Cartoon was appropriate, and boy, no matter how powerful a Cossack you are, you never know about a little old lady with a garden and a bat. Anyway, and that's one of the stories. The lady you heard just earlier is joining us for the first time. What I'll tell you is there are, I believe, 82 different stories in Badge 411. All of them were experiences that I had throughout my 32-year career, and all of them are absolutely true, although the names and localities have been changed to protect me. Having spent a large portion of my life in the courtroom going through trials and sentences and whatnot, I become really sensitive to what it's going to be like to be a defendant in court, and I don't want to be one. But enjoy the book. Today, I've got a whole series of notes I wanted to write down and get into a little bit more detail about. And boy, I sure have made a kind of a mess out of it, but I want to get into some differences between the actual criminal courts. In other words, trying and convicting, sentencing adults, people age 18 or over, and juvenile. At least in Arizona, a juvenile is, for juvenile courts, is someone between the ages of 8 and 18. People under the age of 8 will not be prosecuted if they violate the state or local criminal laws. However, that doesn't mean that the parents are going to end up in great shape. Mia says,
whoa, 32 years. You must have gone through so much, given it's somehow half your life in the book and career. Yes.
I'm going to say it again, and I know I say this every day that I'm on the tube here. This career, this being a probation officer, was a wonderful experience. Maybe upwards of 5 or 6 incidents in my 32 years where I thought, what did I join this outfit for? But that's all. I totally loved my career, and you'll read stories about my initial experiences as a probation officer, then my times with gangs. I did about 12 years in the inner city with gangs and whatnot, and working with incorrigibles and whatnot. And that's one of the things I want to get into today. And then finally, again, people who've heard me talk before know very well that I have a big mouth. And my administrators knew that Johnoff has a big mouth because I was constantly complaining for a lot of years about we need more training. We need better training, particularly for the people who are going to work with juveniles in the juvenile detention situations. And we have 3 of them here in this area. You're dealing with kids. And if you're going to motivate people toward changing their behavior, changing their mindsets.
There's a message here.
Oh, McMiller says your book offers a wonderful discussion about the prison system. Wow. Well, thank you.
Thank you for joining.
Yeah, and those of you who end up buying my book will discover that I do have a lot of things to say about the prison system. And as I said, I had a big mouth. I complained a lot about needing more training, particularly for the young men and women who are joining as social workers and detention officers. We need more training. Well, one day, one of the directors said to me, well, can you write one? And again, because I have a big mouth, I said, oh, sure, I can write one. And he said, great, you have 90 days. Want to see your first group of classes, your first academy occur 90 days from now. So there I was, and I wrote it, and I have to say I'm very proud of it. And fortunately for everybody, including me, there were other probation officers with whom I had served for a long time who had similar kinds of thoughts, and they joined me and helped me put it together. And I ran the academy for 6 years before I finally retired. And that was a wonderful experience. I had a lot to say about that in my book as well. Juveniles can be charged as adults. Cassandra says, agreed, we can't just throw individuals who, yeah, to children, expect them to treat them appropriately. Yeah, it's the idea of dealing with juveniles, particularly troubled juveniles. It's really challenging. The psychiatrists and psychologists with whom we've worked in my department for all these years have always emphasized that from a child's birth to about age 5 or 6, the slate has been pretty much written on their lives regarding their attitudes and predicting behavior. And my experience is that, yeah, that is true. That doesn't mean, though, that behavior and attitudes can't change. And if you are going to involve yourself in changing on the juvenile, on the offenders, the juvenile is the place to go. Adults, maybe, hopefully, maybe they will change. Not as likely. They've had a long time to continue their inappropriate behaviors. With juveniles, you have a chance. That doesn't mean that all juveniles are workable. It also doesn't mean that all juveniles are not workable. How does it get started? Is it the parents' fault? Boy, how many times have I heard this? Yeah, it's the parents' fault. Those parents are neglecting, or there's no father in the home, or yada, 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 yada. There finally comes a time when the community will expect an individual, and that includes an individual from age 8 on, to be responsible themselves for their own behavior. And that is a difficult lesson for a lot of these kids to learn, but they need to learn it if they are going to survive in any community. Believe it or not, that includes in any lockup community as well, because the rules are not only there, the rules are more stringent there than they are in the regular community. Personalities.
Okay, here's a new one. It says,
Carmen Rodriguez says, what initiatives are in place to prevent juvenile delinquency?
oh, boy.
Well, a lot of thoughts and prayers. The juvenile justice system doesn't work so much on prevention, although we do. We like to be in the community and we like to make ourselves seen. We like to make ourselves heard like any other law enforcement officer. Schools hopefully are going to help parents. You know, you can't lay it all on parents, but you got to lay some on them, at least early on. But again, comes a time when you got to make decisions for yourself. And this is a key element. What motivates the individual? What kinds of issues are involved in it? What kind of thought processes has the kid learned that works for him or her? And believe it or not, there are girl offenders.
They're the only ones that scared me in the detention.
When my wife took her first tour of a detention facility, yeah, you know, girls, the angry girls really are difficult to work with. There's for most of them, there's a lot of reasons why they're angry, and molestation and in-house molestation certainly is a major issue. Teacher molestation. Oh, that gets into a whole different kind of thing. But yeah, there's a lot of reasons why they decide to do what they're going to do. And what you want to do, one of the things you want to do when you're working with one of these kids, particularly in the detention facility, is what are your goals? You know, what?
Okay, Christine.
Christine says, I've never known we can detain children as young as 8. Wouldn't they be reprimanded by their parents?
Oh.
Well, yeah, that can happen. If they have parents, that can happen. Some of them don't. You know, and that brings me that brings me off onto a whole different path. There are two major different issues that the juvenile justice system addresses itself to. One is delinquent children who violate criminal law. The other is what they call status offenders, incorrigible children, unmanageable children. They are offenders by virtue of their status of age, so that a child protective services, a parent, police can refer a juvenile to the juvenile justice system as status offenders, incorrigible offenders. Mia wants to know what kind of crimes these juveniles commit. I expect mostly small case theft. Do these? Mia, I am sad to tell you that there isn't hardly an offense in the criminal law that I have not experienced a juvenile committing, and that goes all the way to homicide. Again, how do you understand why these people, kids or adults, do what they do? And I hear it all the time. Well, I must be crazy. Well, you know, it's society's fault. Well, it's the Democrats' fault. Well, it's
Republicans.
Yeah,
or whoever.
it's a Republican.
Whichever one you want to blame.
Whatever your own bias is, that's who's really at fault for causing all these crimes. It's the thought process. What is the person's goal? what do they hope to achieve by doing it? I had mentioned at another time, one of my offenders who was kind of infamous for being able to steal cars in a heartbeat. And that reminds me of I had a 13-year-old gang girl who could use a screwdriver and start and drive off anybody's car. And I learned a lot from her. You know, you do want to learn. What is their goal? Well, this one car thief had promised his girlfriend that he would take her to the state fair, but he didn't have a car, didn't even have a bicycle, although he did steal one once in a while. He had to have a car. He had no choice. He had to steal that car to take his girlfriend to the state fair. And that was the goal. That's what the kid hoped to achieve. Is it crazy? Is it unreasonable? It's simply a juvenile offender's thought process. That's all. And in other words, in order to understand why what's happened has happened and how you're going to possibly help that individual deal with the issues, you gotta understand their thought process. Yours doesn't count except for remediating the situation later on down the road. The initial thing is, what was that person thinking? And you got to be objective. In any neighborhood, you're working on the streets in any neighborhood, whether you're a uniformed patrol officer, a probation officer, or a parole officers being the people who work with criminals who've been convicted and done prison time and they're out early being supervised. Those are parole officers supervising them. Cassandra says, has someone been exposed to them? What profile can you make of the average juvenile criminal? Do these have indications that they, yeah. Funny you should bring that up. In order to profile juvenile offenders, you need to look at the family structure. You need to look at the neighborhood. Is this a super wealthy neighborhood or is it a super impoverished neighborhood? What is the nature of the people that live in that neighborhood? Are they primarily Hispanic? Are they primarily Anglo? Or are they primarily Black? What? All these issues take effect, so that there is no, quote, standard offender, just like there's no, quote, standard adult offender. You got to look at the entire picture. And one of the important things, this is what I was just starting to get into, that you need to do when you're going to work on the streets, when you're going to need to work with people who have serious problems, serious issues, is you got to go in there with an open mind. You got to be objective. You've got to not get into a game where, well, I'm the social worker and I'm going to cure you if you just cooperate, kind of thing. You got to discover what their issues are and what are their goals. When a person, a juvenile, for example, has been found delinquent or guilty of an offense and set for sentencing, and I'm involved in a pre-sentence investigation where I'm going to be talking to the offender, to the offender's family, to the people in the neighborhood, to the victims, and find out what issues there are about restitution. I'm getting into all of that, and I have got to be at least objective enough. I've got to put on my objective hat. Yeah, we all have biases. Yes, I have biases. Although, Lord knows, I'm perfect, aren't I? But you gotta set aside those biases and put on your objective hat and discover what are the person's goals. In juvenile, what's the family's goals as well?
Okay, there's a good question.
Beverly McReynolds said, Have you had prisoners who have mental deficiencies? Oh, yes. Maybe adults who lack the awareness of an actual adult.
Oh boy, that's a hard one.
Yeah. Yeah. As I said earlier, we have had a number of psychiatrists and psychologists over the years, some of them who are just magnificent, that have helped us. That we do psychological tests, get into psychiatric issues, if need be. The child can be psychiatrically hospitalized for a period of time. One of the many kinds of ways we can go in the disposition or sentencing of the individual. There is so much to this. It's just a whole new universe when you get into the juvenile or criminal, either one, justice systems. It is a totally different universe. And the people who 9 times out of 10, I see this on Facebook all the time, will claim to know everything there is to know about anything anybody could possibly want to know about criminal justice or juvenile justice. They know the least there is to know. Okay. Again, my book has some 82 of my experiences on the streets, in the detention facilities, in the academy, and it still doesn't really completely tell the story or even tell my story. That's just 80 of the things. JP says, how can communities overcome stigmas and support the reintegration of boy? Oh man, that is a job that we all need to work at, and you see, brings up a whole nother thing that I could talk for hours about. Of course, I could talk for hours about anything, right? But if you have let's take here's one bad case situation. A young gangster who has been involved in personal injuries, maybe a homicide, auto thefts, on and on and on and on and on and on. And he goes to a juvenile corrections facility for a period of time, or he gets placed in a residential placement system like a boys ranch or girls ranch kind of thing. What's going to happen ultimately is they're going to be released and they're going to go back into the same neighborhood again. Likely. Sometimes not, but more than likely, they're going back to the same neighborhood. Now, what are you going to do? Okay. These people are going to be influenced by former companions into becoming, again, present day companions. What are the new goals that the offender? Hopefully, you've had people in the detention system, in the prison, the juvenile or adult prison system, and probation officers and social workers, getting with that individual and helping that person rethink their issues and set goals for themselves. How are they going to achieve those goals? What are we going to do to help support those goals? And one of the major things we're talking about that I haven't really addressed is money. Man, it costs. It costs. Where's the money going to come from? And that's more than just a political issue. That's realistic. In my court system, which was I worked in the academy throughout the state, but when I was working as a street officer or in juvenile detention, I worked in Maricopa County, biggest and wealthiest county in the state of Arizona.
Sadly, we're getting down to the last little bit.
They all had budgets, and we were short of money after the first 6 months of every fiscal year because it is so flaming expensive to deal with these problems. It's not just, oh, kid, I'm going to pity pat you on the backside and tell you to be a good little boy or girl. And you're going to say, oh, yeah, I'm going to be a good little boy and girl. They're going to go out and do that. No, it's not like that. It's changing a lifestyle. It's changing thought processes. Oh,
I think
boy.
you have to say goodbye for
I
today.
have to say goodbye. But I'll be back tomorrow and I'm going to talk some more about this.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you. And please, if you get half a chance at all, read my book.